Hello, and welcome to Your Vote Counts Ballot Measures. My name is Bernadine Anderson, and I'm here as a member of the League of Women Voters. From the very beginning in 1920 and now 100 years later, our nonpartisan mission was and is to foster education in citizenship and support improved legislation. Our purpose is to provide objective, unbiased information so voters can make informed decisions. League researchers and editors wrote these reports using information from the Secretary of State, sponsor and opponents, legislators, staff, and topic experts. Supporters and opponents were invited to read and review and comment on the supporters' say and the opponents' say sections. 4 state measures have qualified for our 2020 November 3rd Oregon ballot. Measure 107 is a proposed constitutional amendment coming to us by legislative referral. If anything happens with this measure, unforeseen questions arises, those changes must come back to the vote of the people. However, measures 108, 109, 110 are statutory. That means these represent changes to our state laws and can be modified by the legislature and the courts. 108 was a legislative referral, and 109 is an initiative petition. Now, let's go ahead and let's look specifically at Measure 107, titled Allows Laws Limiting Political Campaign Contributions and Expenditures. It requires disclosure of political campaign contributions and expenditures, and it requires political campaign advertisements to identify who paid for them. The financial impact, as stated by the Oregon Financial Committee, says this measure will have no impact on state revenue, and the only expenditures will be incurred by whatever needs to be paid for to put in the official voters pamphlet.
What happens if it does or does not pass?
There are probable results that we can look at for a yes vote and a no vote. For a yes vote, there would be laws that limit and or require the disclosure of both contributions and expenditures of campaigns that are made to influence how an election would be allowed. Also, it would allow laws that require campaign or election advertisements to identify who paid for them. Now, the probable results of a no vote, we would keep the state constitutional wording on this subject, which says laws limiting contributions to candidates or committees by a person, a committee, a union, a corporation violate the Constitution.
Why has this come up, and what difference will this measure make in campaigns?
The background tells us some dates, and we'll start with 1997. At that time, the Oregon Supreme Court ruled that the state constitution prohibits limiting contributions to or expenditures of political campaigns or those campaigns that are designed to influence the outcome of an election. Then in 2004, attempts were made to change the state constitution and pass campaign finance contributions. These did not pass. In 2016 and again in 2019, Multnomah County and Portland proposed campaign limits. These were challenged and they've not been put into effect. However, in April of 2020, as part of a Multnomah County litigation, the Oregon Supreme Court ruled that the Oregon Constitution does allow limits on campaign donations as long as they don't target expression. Since 2019, an Oregon law requires that ads supporting or opposing a clearly identified candidate must include the name of the person or the entity that paid for them. Let's look at specifically what this measure proposes. We already know that it is an Oregon Constitution amendment that is designed to do several things. One is that it would permit the state legislature, the governing body of a city, county, or municipality, or a district, or the people, by using the initiative process, to enact laws of or ordinances that relate to the use of money or in monies of all kinds in political or other campaigns in their jurisdiction. Now, more specifically, let's look at what those limitations might be as stated in this proposal. It would limit contributions made to political campaigns, such as those for candidates or ballot measures, etc., in a way that won't prevent candidates or political committees from raising adequate resources to do effective advocacy. This proposal would also require the disclosure of contributions or expenditures that are made by political campaigns or others that are trying to influence the outcome of any election. Again, this proposal requires that political campaign ads or ads made to influence the outcome of any election must identify the person or entities that are paying for them. This proposal also limits expenditures made in connection with political campaigns or to influence the outcome of an election to the extent that's permitted under the Constitution of the United States.
What will we be hearing from those that want the measure to pass and from those that don't?
Supporters, if you were to visit with them, would tell you these things. They would say that Oregon is only one of 5 states that has no contribution limit of any kind. As a result, large corporations, wealthy donors, and special interest groups have an undue influence over candidates who are elected. Supporters would also say that this measure could reduce the influence of money in politics, and it would allow candidates to compete more equitably for public office. Supporters would also remind us that this is a measure about transparency. The public has a right to know the true sources of money spent on elections. They would also tell us that this reform will promote citizen participation in the political process by reducing the influence of special interests and the wealthy. But now, what would opponents say? Opponents would say that special interests represent the interests and the voices of many ordinary citizens. They would also tell us that limiting campaign contributions and expenditures does not really level the playing field. And they would also tell us that the measure would weaken the freedom of speech of Oregonians, and political speech deserves the most protection, not the least. This is information about Ballot Measure 107. Now, let's take a look at Ballot Measure 108. Ballot Measure 108 addresses an increase in cigarette and cigar taxes. It establishes a tax on e-cigarettes and nicotine vaping devices, and it will fund some health programs.
Taxes generally bring in revenue. What is expected from increasing cigarette tax and now taxing nicotine vaping devices?
Now, fiscal impact has several features to it. The Secretary of State and the State Treasurer estimate that the measure will increase our state revenues by a little over $111 million through the time period of 2019 to 2021, and $331 million in 2021 to 23. Local government, the state's general fund, and mental health programs at the Oregon Health Authority could see a decline in the revenue if the measure passes, but that's because the current cigarette tax and the proposed tax are dedicated to different purposes. Administrative expenses are expected to decrease to approximately $1.1 million in 2019 to 2021, and a little over $1 million again in 2021 to 2023. Beyond the cost of administration, the impact of revenue increases and decreases on state and local government expenditures is indeterminate because it depends on what decisions those levels of government make. Now, what would it mean to have a yes vote, and what would it mean to have a no vote? For a yes vote, we would find in Section 8 of this measure that it states that the tax increase on cigarettes would be $2 if the pack is labeled 20 and $2.50 if the pack is labeled 25. Nicotine vaping devices would have a tax established at 65% of wholesale. Now, what does that mean for a no vote? A no vote means that tax rates for tobacco and nicotine products will remain at current rates, and nicotine vaping products would not be taxed. Some background to help you understand this measure. Oregon is one of approximately 22 states that do not tax nicotine delivery systems. 28 states have taxes on e-cigarettes and vaping products that range from 96% in Minnesota to 5 cents per milliliter in several other states. Each of these states choose to either look at it as a percentage of cost or they look at it as a volume of nicotine. And so there are some debates and discussion about which is an easier record keeping method. Nicotine is taxed in California at 56%. Washington, using volume, says 9 to 27 cents per milliliter, and Nevada also uses a percentage at 30%. Measure 108 would place Oregon's tax at 65% of the wholesale. Now, what else helps us understand this measure is to look at some data that comes to us from the 2014 census. And it shows that taxes collected from tobacco and nicotine, as opposed to alcohol or gaming, are twice as much. The CDC tells us who is using these products, and it tells us that minorities, those with not receiving a high school diploma, those earning $35,000 per year, and the uninsured. Now, lastly, it's important to know in 2016, right here in Oregon, we find that 17% of adult Oregonians smoke cigarettes. And in 2017, we found that 17% of 11th graders were using e-cigarettes. Current tobacco taxes help fund the Oregon Health Plan.
Where will these new tax monies go?
Let's take a look at what the proposal addresses. The measure would change the tax formula for tobacco products currently taxed, and it would impose new taxes on any product containing nicotine that's intended to be burned or heated for personal consumption. So that could refer to our vaping products that transmit nicotine, not the ones that transmit marijuana. After payment of administrative distribution, and what does that mean? That means an administrative distribution, it's monies that would go to the Department of Transportation for the elderly and those with disabilities. It means money goes to the general fund, and it means that it goes to a program that's called Tobacco Use Reduction Program. Now, what's left, 90%, would go to the Oregon Health Association Authority to help with medical needs and mental health programs. 10% of that remaining after the distribution would go to tribal, cultural, health providers and their programs for the purpose of discouraging tobacco and nicotine use.
This measure seems to be addressing health effects of smoking. How then do supporters and opponents disagree?
Supporters say Oregonians should be encouraged to quit using tobacco and nicotine because of the danger to their health. The measure expands the current taxation to include new nicotine inhalant delivery systems, which may discourage the use of e-cigarettes and vaping products. Supporters also say surrounding states have nicotine taxes in place. So Oregon should align with them to discourage cross-border tax avoidance purchasing. But opponents tell us this. Opponents say a tax on e-cigarettes and vaping products may drive people back to smoking cigarettes, a more medically dangerous type of consumption. They also say that tobacco taxes are paid disproportionately by low-income individuals. And they would also tell us sin taxes are a relatively small income generator. This is information about Ballot Measure 108. Now, here to help us understand Measures 109 and 110 is Diana Bodker, also a member of League of Women Voters. She will also share important voting dates and locations with you.
This is Ballot Measure 109. This is a statutory amendment placed on the ballot by initiative petition. It allows the manufacture, delivery, and administration of the drug psilocybin, and this will be given at supervised licensed facilities, and it imposes a 2-year development period by the Oregon Health Authority. Mushrooms from which this drug is obtained, psilocybin, are a variety of mushrooms with psychoactive properties, and they must be carefully identified. The financial impact. The cost to the general fund would be estimated at $7 million for development. Ongoing costs would be estimated to be covered by fees and taxes.
What would the assessed fees and taxes be?
There would be a 15% point of sales tax on psilocybin. Cost to the local government would be indeterminate. The probable results of a yes vote, it would allow manufacture, delivery, and administration of psilocybin, 2-year period of development for the program.
Could an individual buy psilocybin for self-treatment under this proposal?
No, not under this proposal. It would only be administered under tightly controlled circumstances by licensed supervisors at licensed facilities. Probable results of a no vote. The current law prohibits manufacture, delivery, possession of psilocybin and imposes criminal penalties. Supporters say, in some mental health cases, relief may occur by using psilocybin. It has proved useful for anxiety, depression, and PTSD, among other mental disorders.
Can all mental health issues be treated with psilocybin?
No, people have to be carefully screened before they receive the drug. Those with conditions such as bipolar disorder or schizophrenia could develop psychosis with the use of the drug. Opponents say that this law would put Oregon in conflict with federal drug policy. Also, they feel it is premature to do another biochemical experiment when marijuana is still uncertain. Also, the use of natural medicine should be decriminalized measure, and this measure doesn't go far enough. Now let us look at Ballot Measure 110. This is a statutory amendment brought to us by petition. This is a drug addiction treatment and decriminalization.
Why is this measure necessary?
It will help to provide addictive services throughout Oregon for those who can't get it. Oregon currently ranks 50 of the 50 states for the availability of drug treatment. The impact of this measure, should it pass, will be that it will redistribute marijuana revenue above $11.25 million to the Drug Treatment and Decriminalization Fund. It reduces revenue to state school fund, state police, mental health programs, and local community corrections. Also, $100 fines could be levied. How will this impact the criminal justice system? It would decrease enforcement, court, and incarceration costs.
Why are these transfers of funds necessary?
Supporters say appropriate treatment programs are more effective than incarceration. Spending money on treatment is more effective than spending money on arrest, jailing, and prosecution. Will any person awaiting addiction treatment be able to get it? Yes. It will not be dependent on the ability to pay or having the right insurance. Opponents say that the dedicated marijuana tax income would be diverted, and that the revenue from the marijuana would be inadequate to fund regulation and treatment. So I would like to thank Capital Community Media for their time and expertise in creating this program and making it available across the state through YouTube and Vote 411. Thanks to the League of Women Voters of Oregon for doing the nonpartisan research necessary for this presentation. And thanks to you, the public, for watching your vote counts in order to become a more informed voter. For more voter information, including dates, registration, candidates for state and local areas, and ballot measure information, go to Vote 411. For those displaced by forest fires, ballots will be held at the post office servicing their area. Voters who do not receive their ballots by 10/21 should call their county clerk's office. If you have a temporary address where you want your ballot sent, call your clerk's office or file a new registration card. You have until October the 13th to register to vote, with ballots being mailed to you beginning on October the 14th. November the 3rd is Election Day. Please remember that postmarks don't count. Elections matter and make a difference. So remember to vote. Your vote counts.